Good evening. It's good to be here. Good to see you. Glad that you are here. I'm very thankful that as many people as here, no one has walked up to me and asked me like Jamie Bryant did when I wore this shirt to church. He asked me, he said, "What did Connie make out of the rest of the tablecloth?" So, nothing. We're to talk tonight about relationships. Jesus, the great physician. Jesus, the great physician, healer of relationships. What is a relationship?
Bond.
A bond. What kind of bond?
Usually beneficial.
I like the word usually, because it is usually beneficial. Now, a definition from a dictionary says that a relationship is it's a connection either by affinity or blood. Name some relationships by blood.
Parent-child.
Parent-child.
Brother-sister.
Brother-sister.
Uncle.
Uncle, aunt. The other way.
Grandparents.
Grandparents. Niece, nephew. Well, see, that's about as far out as we need to go, because we don't need to get great uncles, and you know, we could go on and on and on and be ridiculous. But we've got parent-child, we've got brother-sister, we've got uncles, aunts, grandparents. Those are all blood relationships. Now, what kind of a relationship might be by affinity?
Work.
Work.
Husband, wife.
Husband and wife. You see, there's no blood there, but there is an attraction. There is the attraction there. What else? Parent-child. My two are adopted. So we can have a parent-child relationship by affinity, like husband and wife by affinity. Yeah, what else? Somebody said work. Neighbor. Friends. Absolutely, friends. Classmates. Speaking of classmates, what about teacher-student relationship? Okay. What about a club relationship? A club. Like when I was young, I was in a 4-H club, and I had good friends in the 4-H club. What about a club in the community? Where you live, you may have, sometimes communities will have a clubhouse, and the neighbors of the community will belong to that. These are relationships by affinity. Different ones by different connections by just other than blood. These are friendship type connections. These are work type connections, business partner type connections, boss worker type connections, worker boss type connections by affinity. What does it take to get along? What does it take to get along in a relationship?
Respect.
Respect. Effort. Understanding.
Communication.
Say it again. A little louder. I'm a little hard here. Communication. Patience. Love. Humility. Okay, now I could take all of those and I could group them under two things. One of them would be concern. One of them would be concern. mutual care and the other concern. Now, in a husband and wife relationship, you have to have mutual care. You mentioned love, yes. But mutual care. Love doesn't always make us care. Does it? Because we have people who will say, and people will deem the idea of love, but they show no care. That's not mutual. Mutual means one another. Mutual means I care for you, you care for me. We share this kind of care one with another. We can have a mutual concern one for the other. But there must be, within that, there must be both parties involved. Can a relationship be conducted by one?
Not very well.
You said that correctly. Not very well. Not very well. Now, at this point, I'm going to ask you, do all relationships need to continue? No. 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 There are some relationships that we get into that we don't need to continue. There are some work relationships that we get into that we don't need to continue. There are some friends relationships that we get into that we see we don't need to continue. There can be all sorts of relationships that we don't need to continue. Sometimes religiously, spiritually. We are in a relationship that cannot continue and be godly. But a relationship has to have two. A relationship has to have two. And the two need to be able to continue. They need to have that mutual concern one for the other. So that the relationship is a pair. It is a team. It is a group. It is talked about as effort. Now, within a relationship, you mentioned something a while ago that I need to go back to. There are responsibilities in a relationship. There are responsibilities in a relationship. As a husband and wife, there are responsibilities. As a parent-child, there are responsibilities. As a boss worker, there's responsibilities. As a club member, there are responsibilities. As a neighbor, there are responsibilities. As a friend, there are responsibilities. What kind of responsibilities are there depends upon the relationship that is there. You don't have at all the same kind of responsibility toward me as you do your wife. You don't at all have the responsibilities toward me as you would a boss. You see, the type of responsibilities we have is so dependent upon the type of relationship that we have. And it requires us to know the limits and the bounds of the relationship. Now, since we know what a relationship is, since we have an idea that it is a mutual concern one for the other, with mutual responsibilities one to the other, what can wreck a relationship? All of you, has anybody ever had a relationship wrecked? All of us have lost friends.
Lies.
Lies? Lies, absolutely. Lack of trust. Lack of trust. You see, that loses the mutual concern. That loses the mutual care when one lies to the other. Yeah, that's a good point. What else can wreck a relationship? Selfishness. Selfishness can wreck a relationship. Not being responsible to the relationship. There are many things that can cause us to lose sight of the responsibilities. Now, if J.R. and I, in our friendship, if I begin to, like you said, tell him lies, he can't trust me anymore. What would that do to our relationship one with the other? If J.R. and Sue began to tell lies to one another, what would that do to their marital relationship? Would wreck it. You see, you've lost sight of the concern. You've lost sight of the responsibilities. You've lost sight of what it takes to keep the relationship going. You must, we must, all of us must, in every relationship that we have, keep sight, keep the vision on, keep the channel going as to that relationship whatsoever. Without that, the relationship would be wrecked. What about anybody ever lose a friend because somebody else became their friend? Shake your head up and down. It's good exercise for the neck. It's the right answer. It's the right answer. We've all lost friends because somebody else was inserted, and it wasn't a triangle anymore. Now then it's two parts pulling at one. So, the loss of mutual concern, the loss of mutual care, the loss of mutual responsibility. Do you ever lose a relationship because the other partner did not fulfill the relationship? Regardless of what caused it, regardless of whether it was somebody else, regardless of whether it was a different consideration, just quit fulfilling the relationship. You see, now all the relationships that we mentioned, parent-child, husband-wife, all the blood relationships that we mentioned can be wrecked by this very same thing. Can be wrecked by the destruction of the responsibilities that are required to keep the relationship going. As a dad, when we adopted Gretchen, she was 34 days old. Biracial. Her daddy was probably Panamanian. Her birth mother was white. JR, can kind of tell them about the lady. There was a lady in our town that heard that we had a little girl whose birth father was Panamanian, and she kind of mixed up words. And she said, "Oh, you need to go see the Berrymans. They have the prettiest little baby girl. She's part Pomeranian." That could almost destroy a relationship. But you see, if when we adopted her, she was 34 days old, if at a few months later, I just decided to take off so I could play golf when I wanted to, so I could take a year off from teaching if I wanted to, so I could just tour Texas if I wanted to. What about my relationship with Gretchen? My relationship with Connie Joe? See, I'm from Kentucky, two names for it. What about my relationship with them? You see, I would have lost care. I would have lost concern. I would have lost the relationship with her and with Connie. I would not have been fulfilling my part of the relationship. High school kids here. Sometimes they have a relationship, boy-girl, and the boy gets interested in another girl, or the girl gets interested in another boy, and we say, "Oh, honey, that's just life. Just go on with it. That's just life." But what if it's 10 years later and it's husband and wife? What if it's 20 years later and it's parent-child? That's not just life. What causes those things? Now, relationship. This is a connection that is attracted by affinity, or it is connected by blood. Now, I want to go to one specific relationship that is by affinity, and I want somebody to read for me the first 6 verses of 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Then I want somebody to connect for me the next 5 verses, 7 through 11, and then somebody to pick up 12 through 16. 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Now, who's got the first 6? You got the first 6? Who's got from 7 through 11? You got 7 through 11? 1 Corinthians 7? Who's got the last 5? Who's got you got the last 5?
Sorry.
Okay. 12 through 16. Okay? Verse 6.
Now concerning things of which you wrote to me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, because of sexual immorality, let each man have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. Let the husband render to his wife the affection due her, and likewise also the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have the authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another except with consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, so that Satan does not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. But I say this is a concession. But I say this as a concession, not as a commandment.
All right. Now you see, he started out here in chapter 7. And he's talking about a husband and wife relationship. Now, each one of those has to have mutual concern, and they have to have mutual care. And in that mutual concern and in that mutual care, they are to hold this relationship together. Now, I'm not telling you anything new. Paul's not telling you anything new. But sometimes we forget it. Sometimes we don't think about it. Next verses. 11.
For I wish that all men were even as myself, that each one has his own gift from God, one in his manner and another in that. But I say to the unmarried and to the widows, it is good for them if they remain even as I am. But if they cannot exercise self-control, let them marry. For it is better to marry than to burn with passion. Now, to the married I command, yet not I, but the Lord. A wife is not to depart from her husband. But even if she does depart, let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband. And the husband is not to divorce his wife.
Okay. Now we see in this that Paul is talking about this connection by affinity. And this connection by affinity is husband and wife. And they are not to part from one another unless it is for a time that they may participate in fasting and prayer. Now that's not a week or two, a month or two. And he's going to be very plain with this, you see. In the husband and wife relationship, she is not to refuse her body to him, and he is not to refuse his body to her. That is in the marital relationship. Now I'm pretty plain. No, I'm not pretty. I'm plain. We don't need to mince words. We need to understand God. God made Eve for Adam because there was not a helpmeet suitable. Not a helpmeet suitable. Paul is talking about this relationship, and this relationship needs to be considered. It's not something that you jump into after a month of dating. Or do you?
Sometimes.
It is something that you need to consider. It is something that you need to consider and to understand the other part. To understand it. And to know the responsibilities. Now, why am I talking to you all about this? Because you all are already old enough to be married. You are married. You have kids. Some of you have grandkids. Why am I talking to you about this? Good question. Not really. You're the ones to teach the kids. You're the ones to show the grandkids. If you don't know it, how are you going to teach them? You remember Romans chapter 10, verses 13 through 17? How are we going to hear unless we have somebody to teach us? How are we going to hear? If somebody's not there to teach us, how are we going to hear? From verse 12 on.
But to the rest, I, not the Lord, say, if any brother has a wife who does not believe and she is willing to live with him, let him not divorce her. And a woman who has a husband who does not believe, if he is willing to live with her, let her not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the husband. Otherwise your children would be unclean, but now they are holy. But if the unbeliever departs, let him depart. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases. But God has called us to peace. For how do you know, O wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, O husband, whether you will save your wife?
When Connie Joe married me, I wasn't a Christian. She was. What Paul is saying here, after a few months deciding that I wasn't going to immediately become a Christian, she could just walk out on me? No. Shake your head left or right. No. No. She couldn't. If I was willing to live with her, and I was, she shouldn't have left me. Some of you have been married the other way. The man was a Christian, the wife wasn't. Marriage has to be in the Lord, Paul writes. Marriage has to be in the Lord. Now, if it is in the Lord, then it's a justifiable marriage according to God's teaching. There are some marriages that are not justifiable because of God's teaching. A marriage that's made between two that don't have the right to be married is not justifiable. That's not a relationship, really, in the mind of God. It has to be separated. And it has to be kept separated. Because it can't be made whole and functional in the sight of God. Again, why am I talking to you about that? Because you must be willing to teach your children and your grandchildren, and you must not mince words. You must teach them the real truth, the whole truth, and nothing but God's Word about it. Marriage is the second most important relationship in your life. What's the first? The Lord God. Good. The Lord God. Marriage is the one we spend more of our time with. Now, what did Paul mean when he said that I would that the young men are not married, stay unmarried? The young women not married, stay unmarried. At the time Paul is writing, people are taking Christians. They're taking Christian families and they're holding the children up in front of them. And they're saying, deny Christ or we'll kill your children. We think things are bad, and they are, but they're not that bad. They're grabbing the husband and wife, and they're taking the husband over in front of the wife, and they're telling her, deny Christ or we'll kill him. We'll cut his head off. Paul said, if you're not married, don't marry. If you're not married, don't marry. It's better though he said to marry than to burn. What do you mean by that? Sexual. You see, we don't need to mince those words. We need to teach those words plain and clear so our children, they understand what sexual means. When we try to hide it from them, we mix up what God said. They understood what Paul meant. They understood it. And as I say, I try to be plain. My wife tells me sometimes I'm too plain. I don't mean to be dirty, but I mean to be plain. You all that have young children, realize that these young children need to know about marriage before they get to it. This relationship, as I say, is the second most important relationship, and is the relationship that causes more problem to Christians than any other relationship. You can get over some of the others. As I told you last night, I had 2 girlfriends that dumped me. And I was the winner. One of them's been married 3 times. I think the other one's been married 4 times. I would have been one of those. I would have been dumped hard then. You see? Marriage is so very important to you that we must, preachers must talk about it in a plain fashion so that you'll understand it, to teach your children and to teach your grandchildren, and to show them what marriage should be like. You can see it, can't you, Scott? To show them what marriage should be like, how that there should be mutual concern, how that there should be mutual care, how that there should be on each side. When I counsel young people about marriage, I'll ask them if they know what it's going to take, and oftentimes they'll say, well, yeah, 50-50, give and take. And I say, no. No. And they look at me kind of strange. And no, it's not give and take. Honey, you can't take anything from him, and sir, you can't take anything from her. It's about 90-10. Give and then receive. Each one thinks they're giving 90, and each one thinks they're only receiving 10. But if you work at it, 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 you can make it go. This relationship is so important that Paul spent over half of a chapter on it. Now, let's see what are some of the things, and I don't want Mo and JR to give all these away because they've had to deal with them. Or Mike. What are some of the things that can break a marriage? What are some things that can break a marriage?
Unwilling to forgive.
Unwilling to forgive is very, very important. See, if I don't forgive Connie Joe of something, the Lord's not going to forgive me, is He? Amen. If I don't forgive her of some menial thing that she's done, He's not going to forgive me. We have to look at with kindness, care, and concern. Lack of forgiveness. What's another thing?
Unfaithfulness.
Unfaithfulness. Again, we're dealing with forgiveness. If one turns, we're dealing with forgiveness. And you know, forgiveness is not a once done. It's not a once done. Just like we talked about confession is not a once done. Just like we talked about living the life of Christ is not a once done. Sometimes we have to work at it. We members of the church, quote, members of the church, we sometimes have this holier than thou attitude. I can't believe you've committed that sin. I don't think I want my children around your children anymore. I can't believe you've done that. I can't believe you pretend to come to church. What are you doing? That's not the kind of love and concern I feel when I'm among you. And we need to practice that love and concern. We need to practice that mutual care for one another, even in the marriage. Even in the marriage. I have a son-in-law who is constantly accusing his wife of being unfaithful to him. She had to put a piece of paper over the little square window in the door so that nobody driving by could see her if she happened to be in her PJs. Well, you couldn't see in that house driving by through that little square window if you stopped. He's lost sight of his responsibility. He's lost sight of his mutual concern. He's lost sight of his love. What else can do this? What else can cause one to wreck? What about religious differences? Can that cause it to wreck? Religious differences? Is that something you have to work on? Something you have to work on. That son-in-law's been withdrawn from. He's a math teacher. He's going to be a principal one of these days, serving as an assistant principal now. He feels like he's just a little bit too good to be, just a little bit too far up there to be believing in this thing called God. Can you be too educated to believe in God? Well, Paul talked about those in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, didn't he? The high and mighty. Two in a relationship becomes one. And it takes two carrying each other to become one. It takes two mounting the responsibilities to become one. And to overcome those religious differences by teaching what is in the Bible and staying with what is in the Bible to cause that relationship to continue. We have to stay there. We can't get outside it. We have to stay there. Something else that might cause that relationship to go.
Jealousy.
Jealousy. Just like I was talking about the son-in-law. He is so jealous. His jealousy is sometimes causing him to rant and rave for 2 or 3 days. You know what she has to do? She has to wear a man's t-shirt. So that if she ever bends over, a man cannot see anything that he shouldn't see. And with that, she still grasps her neck. To be sure, jealousy. Jealousy. No trust. No trust. Pure jealousy. Now, I'm not saying that you women should wear these low-cut blouses to where you bend over, everything is obvious. No. 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 And she doesn't wear anything like that anyway. Trust. Jealousy. Religious differences. Those are things that can cause this marital relationship to fall apart. These are things that can cause a relationship to fall totally apart. What else?
Laziness, you mentioned it takes work.
It takes work.
And so if you get lazy.
If you get lazy, yes. If you get lazy, it causes it to fall apart. And you're not meeting your responsibilities. Laziness. Somebody said something up here.
Financial.
Money. Money is such a big thing. Somebody turned to Proverbs 15:27 and hadn't read. Somebody turned to Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 10 that hadn't read. 1 Timothy 6:10 that hasn't read. James 5:3 that hadn't read. Okay? Who got Proverbs 15:27? Okay, back here. Who got Ecclesiastes 5, verse 10? Right here? Okay. Who got 1 Timothy 6:10? Okay, good. James 5:3. Good. This is great. You guys raising your hand. This is great. This is wonderful. This is wonderful. I appreciate your participation. Read for me Proverbs 15:27.
He who is greedy for gain troubles his own house. He who makes pride will live.
He who is greedy makes trouble in his own house. You say money can cause problems in a marriage? Yeah, it can cause problems. Proverb writer had it absolutely right. Who picked out for me Ecclesiastes 5:10? Okay, good.
He who loves silver will not be satisfied with silver, nor he who loves abundance with increase. This also is vanity.
See, the fellow that wrote that was the richest man in the world. Solomon. Didn't matter how much money he had. Didn't matter how much gold he had. It was never enough. Never enough. How about the next one? 1 Timothy 6:10.
For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows.
You see, it's not money. It's not money. Mo, you still got the $5? It's not money. It's not money that causes the sin. What is it? Love of money. Being willing to do anything, being willing to forsake anything, being willing to give up anything for the money. And you see, sometimes that happens in the marital relationship. They're willing to give up, they're willing to destroy for the money. Remember, money is never enough. It's never enough. No matter how much silver, no matter how much gold, it's never enough. How about James 5:3?
Gold and silver are corroded, and the corrosion will be like a witness against you, and will eat your flesh like fire. You have heaped up treasure in the last days.
Now, do you know what you just said? People say to you, well, you can't take your money with you when you die. No, you can't. But you just said that money will go with you as a rusty witness against you. Oh. You may not be able to take it, but it can go as a witness against you. How you've used it. That rusty witness, that material that you've saved up, that corrupted material that you've saved up and die with it, then whose is it going to be? And you see, more marriages are destroyed, I think, over that than anything else. One other thing I want to talk about, and that's children. The disagreement on how to raise children. I think I only have 10 minutes, don't I? 10 after, okay. Make 15. Disagreement on how to raise children. Any of you ever disagree on how to raise children? Shake your head up and down. You've had discussions at home on raising children. One of you didn't want to and the other one wanted to, and you had to talk it out. You have to talk it out. Believe me, it's important. It's so important to talk it out. I'm going through that right now. We have to talk it. We have to be united. We have to be united. And that boy's going to be 31 in a few days. He'll be 31 July the 12th, July the 14th. We will have had him 31 years. He was 2 days and 6 hours old when we got him. He's my son. We have to talk those things out. I could lose my son, but I could lose my son and my wife if I get the bullhead, and don't talk it out. We have to. We have to show our children that we're talking it out. We don't need to say, well, you better wait till Daddy gets home. You just wait till Daddy gets home, then you're going to get your... You better be good in the grocery. I'm going to tell you, Mama. I'm going to tell you, Mama, if you don't quit it. Agree. Talk it out to agree. Teach your children, teach your grandchildren when they're married. I know you are married. I know you are. And I know there's been some that have had troubles. Any group this size has some that had troubles. Any group. And any group that has married couples in it, there's some that's going to have different ones of these problems. Some of you may have even had money problems. Some of you may have even had other kinds of problems. The sexual problems. You may have had those. But you see, with forgiveness and with work, you can work those things out. You can work them out. You can teach your children how to work them out. You can teach your children how to work them out. Other kinds of relationships. We spend a lot of time on marriage, but it's the second most important relationship that you can have. It's the one that's worth working on the hardest, other than the relationship with God. But relationships with friends. Some relationships with friends. What can cause them to break? Betrayal. Between the friends. Betrayal. What else?
Unfaithfulness to God.
Unfaithfulness to God can cause a break of friendships when one is faithful and one isn't faithful. What do you have in common? Politics. Politics can cause friends to be busted. What else? Jealousy. Again, jealousy. Change of social status would fit in that, wouldn't it? One getting a better job and one not. Change of social status, one getting a better education and one not. How much education do you think I've got?
Master's.
He says maybe a master's degree. How much do you think? How much do you think I've got? A master's degree. Maybe a master's degree. What do you think? What? Horse. I'm glad you're talking about the front end and not the south end of that horse. I appreciate it. Thank you, brother. Does it matter? What I'm talking about tonight, does it matter? Does it matter if I know that the top row of the periodic chart is hydrogen and helium, and the second row is lithium and magnesium, and then you've got boron and carbon, and oxygen, and then fluoride, fluorine, and then neon? You mean I haven't used that all night tonight? We haven't talked about that periodically? No. See, that's not important. What is important? You see, you and I can have a friendship. You and I can have a friendship whether I've got a high school education or not, if we are friends over this. And we can be, can't we? But sometimes people let the education. I've had people that would not be my friend because they thought I had too much education. Well, if you didn't know I was a teacher, you probably wouldn't think I had even a college degree. I mean, you know, you got to have a little to teach high school, don't you? Unless I lied about it, like some folks lie about things. So you see, that I don't consider that important. I don't consider that important. I don't think it's something that I need to raise for you. But education can cause a split between good friends. One of them getting an education and one of them not. Gretchen, my daughter, lost friends because she got a good education. Well, there are other things. We could talk about other things that cause friendships and relationships to break. But what does it all boil down to that breaks relationships? What does it all boil down to?
Sin.
That big word, S-I-N, sin. Jesus, the great physician. Jesus, the great physician, is the healer of relationships. He can heal all relationships. He can heal all relationships. He can heal them all if we abide by His prescription. He can heal husband and wife relationships regardless of what's going on, if they each will abide by the prescription and show love and concern. Sometimes those relationships that have been busted and get back together can be even stouter and stronger than they ever were. When sin is removed from any of the relationships, they can get stouter and stronger. What's the first step? What's the first part of the prescription for healing? Hearing. What's the verse? Romans 10. Romans 10 what?
13 to 17.
13 to 17. Okay. Now you see that says that you can't hear without a preacher or teacher. Now, according to Ecclesiastes chapter 33, verses 7 through 9, where does that put the monkey?
What chapter?
Huh?
I think you mean Ezekiel.
What did I say?
Ecclesiastes.
Ah, excuse me. Ezekiel. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Ezekiel 33. I'm sorry. I misspoke. Forgive me. We talked about forgiveness now, didn't we? Didn't we? All right. Where does that put the monkey?
On the watchman.
It's on the watchman. It's on me, isn't it? Each one of you need to reach back and pat your own shoulders, because that's where the monkey is. The teacher. The teacher. Now, do you know what kind of teacher you have to be? You have to be a teacher that's loving enough to show the concern for the other one in that relationship. Teacher-student. What's the next step? Hearing. Romans 10, 13 through 17. Believing. What's the verse? Romans 10:10. What's the next step?
Confess.
Confess. Now we just confess one time, that's it? Well, all we have to do is confess one time? We confess our sins? Is that what we do? What do we confess? What do we confess?
Faith in Jesus.
Our faith in Jesus. Jesus is the Son of God. All right, after the hearing and the believing and the confession, what's next? Repenting. Good. We're getting it quicker. I'm not having to wait on people. Repenting. Is a repenting one time done? What if somebody comes to me 7 times a day and wants to repent? What did Jesus say? He said forgive, but he said also from 7 times 70. Upon the repentance, what's next? Baptized. Be baptized, yes. Very good. What's the verse for that? Acts 2:38, one. Okay, I'm not hearing you. I'm sorry. I got big ears. They just don't work. Did you say Acts 8? Okay, Acts 8, 37, yes. Now, when you're teaching, you want to go from Acts 8 to 26 through 40. And then what's the last step that is continual?
Faithfulness.
Faithfulness unto death. See, that's sometimes the preachers don't preach on that. But we need to, because that faithfulness unto death we can go to Romans chapter 6, verses 1 through 5 and see that totally, completely explained. Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? No. Certainly. Thank you so much for your help. I appreciate it. I wouldn't have gotten through it without you.